Hello everyone, I'm Karan, and to continue our streak of successful, amazing events, today we are going to introduce one of the most happening, exciting young independent watchmakers to India. Today I have Mr. Robin Tallendier from Atelier Wen with us. Hi Robin, welcome to India.
Hi, Karan. Thanks a lot for having me. And hi, guys. I'm so pleased to be here today.
How's your, this is your first time in India?
Yeah, very first time, only the second day. So it all feels like super new to me. Very impressive, very interesting as well. So I'm so glad to be here.
So we'll circle back to the India thing in a bit because I want to first find out what was the inspiration behind the brand Atelier Wen?
Yeah, actually, I mean, thanks a lot for asking. That's like a pretty long story, and it's a very personal story. So it's very linked to myself as a collector. So I started collecting when I was 14 years old. And basically, what happened there was that for my birthday, my parents gave me a Seiko quartz chronograph. And that triggered something in me. Suddenly, I started going online, looking for information about watches. And very quickly, I wanted, an automatic watch because I was thinking, to be a real collector, you need an automatic watch. So one day I came to my dad and I was like, hey, dad, can you buy me a Tissot? And my dad basically told me to go away because he thought for a kid, maybe 500 euros, that's really a lot of money. It's unreasonable. So he told me no, but I still wanted my automatic watch. And I was digging, doing more research. And that's when I first came across Chinese mechanical watches. And back then, maybe for 10, 20 euros, you could get something very decent. And I was very lucky because my family was going to China very often. And the next summer, we went all together and I bought my first few Chinese watches. Moving forward, I got a lot of them, started really building a collection, started getting involved online on the online communities and watch music, which was a really big thing back then. And I had a very big strike of luck in Beijing one summer where I won a scholarship to go study there. I met by chance one of the people I was talking with online. He was like a Canadian gentleman, a big scholar and expert on Chinese watches. And this guy was super connected. He introduced me to the head of the China Chamber of Watchmaking, and this person became my mentor. And then I went back to Beijing for a year and a half. And basically, with my mentor, we toured the whole China and we visited all the makers, the movement makers, the independent watchmakers, the dial makers, the artisans, the craftsmen, really getting a very broad overview of what's done there. And what struck me, besides the quality, which I was aware of course, was the passion of people. You would meet those watchmakers. They have been doing that for 20, for 30, for 40 years, and really their job is all their life, and they love it and they live for it. And that really moved me. I was like, wow, that's really cool. That's really nice. And when I went back to Europe, I mean, you can hear my accent. I'm French. I told my friends about that, and they were like, oh, I mean, stop telling us nonsenses. We all know that China is just the kids in the sweatshop earning maybe $1 per day. So I was like, hey, that's a bit far from what I could experience. So why don't I create a brand, that is very proudly Chinese, very high quality, very premium, and that really try to lay emphasis on that aspect, on the passion, on the heritage, on the craftsman, on the real quality. And so that's the idea for Atelier Wen. Fortunately, my partner, he's also a French guy, but born and raised in Hong Kong, lived all his life there. He also felt very strongly about celebrating the Chinese culture and sharing it with the world. So there we got going. We did our first series called the Porcelain Odyssey, which we financed through Kickstarter. That was quite a success, and that got us going, and that's how the brand was born, basically.
That is, wow, that's quite a story. And just to tell you a few bits, your story of how you started collecting is pretty much resonant with mine.
Oh, really?
Yeah. In fact, I don't know how far back it was for you when you started collecting, but for me, it was barely 10 years back.
Yeah.
And I kind of started reading about watches. I had a couple of quartz watches with me, and I landed on Watch You Seek. Same story,
right? Oh, yeah. Well,
landed on Watch You Seek, tons of conversation there. I eventually moved on to a Seiko automatic watch, and then it's been down the rabbit hole ever since. But yeah, pretty much a similar story, except for starting the brand part. I'm not there yet.
You started a community, so it's very much the same story. We both started something at some point.
A parallel thing, so, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, since you mentioned your first collection, the Porcelain Odyssey, I remember seeing it on Kickstarter and giving it a good thought about should I back it or not. But unfortunately, I missed out on that because again, the connotations that you just said about Chinese watchmaking are absolutely true. At least that's what the perception is in terms of the quality of Chinese watchmaking in the world. That people think that it's not up to standards, it's not up to the mark, and a lot of the cheap stuff is kind of made in sweatshops. I don't think that's the case, because what we are seeing in front of us today, and with multiple conversations with you,
Yeah.
I've kind of come to realize that Chinese watchmaking is an art form in itself. So, like you said, what was your response for the what kind of response did you see for the Porcelain Odyssey series that you launched
Yeah,
first?
honestly, it was like a surprisingly good response because we had no idea. Basically, we were the first to really venture into this positioning of premium Chinese mechanical watches. So when we were at the drawing board, we thought like making 500 watches, because it was a series limited to 500 pieces, would already be a huge number. We were wondering who's gonna get that, who are the collectors who will support us. But to our surprise, actually, we sold this series out and people really liked it. And till this day, we still have like people coming to us and being like, "Oh, can you make some more? Can you sell us some?" So definitely that response took us by surprise. But that really gave us the confidence that okay, there are people who are there who resonate with the message, who like the story, who like the products even more. So we need to keep going, and then like that's how we came to Perception,
Sure.
the current
Sure.
series. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, so now that you've brought the topic onto the perception, what was the thought process behind, for the Porcelain Odyssey being a simplistic case
Yeah.
and style, very beautiful dials, of course, but from there to a modern take on an integrated steel sports watch, what was the thought process behind that?
Yeah, I think we could say that in a way, the Porcelain Odyssey, was the MVP, the minimum viable product. That was the watch to test the concept, test the idea, to see if there would be some sort of fit. We saw that there was, and then we were like, okay, we really need to take things further. We need to like be stronger, harder on the craft, less compromises, and sort of like a more absolute approach. So that's how we came with Perception. We wanted to have real craftsmanship as the centerpiece of the watch. And we were like, okay, why don't we do, real handmade guilloche? And that was very interesting for us because real guilloche in itself is a very rare craft.
Yeah.
There's only
Yeah.
approx 30 craftsmen in the world who can do it.
Right.
Most of them worked for Breguet, for Comblemine, which
Yeah.
is the supplier of Kari Voutilainen.
Yeah.
In Asia, there's only one master doing it. So we're like, yeah, that's something very interesting. And this is like really like what acted, I would say, as the trigger for Perception. But the rest of the watch itself also was very much in tune with that idea of stepping things up. So we improved the materials. Instead of using 316L steel, we use 904L steel, which is a more premium, like with better property steel. We went to customize the movement quite heavily to make it extremely thin. Only 3.4 mm thin, which is like very, very thin, and enable us to have like 9.4 mm like total thickness. We design our own clasp, for which we are registering a patent, which is a very sleek micro adjustment mechanism that you can use on the fly, meaning you don't need to remove the bracelet from your wrist. Yeah, so really everything about that watch was about like stepping up and being like more aligned and more absolute with our vision of celebrating the craftsmanship and the culture.
Superb. Did you find it hard to convince the artisans, the master watchmakers, and the master artisans to, come together and believe in your vision?
At the beginning, it was. When we did the Porcelain Odyssey, we were basically 22 years old. When we first approached the movement makers, we were still in university. We didn't have money, so we arrived there taking a very long night train, not very well dressed, and not having anything, and being like, oh, you need to make those movements for us and to customize them. And they must have thought, who are those kids?
Yeah.
They saw the passion. They saw that really we were believing in it. Maybe they were not believing in it, but they saw that we were believing in it. So yeah, they took a chance, I think. And till this day, I'm very thankful for them for taking this chance and letting us give it a try. And same for the guilloche master, because we came to him and we were like, whatever you're doing, we're gonna make so much more. We're gonna help you build up your workshop. It almost sounds like a scam, like there's someone who comes to you and is like, oh, you're gonna grow a lot, and we're gonna make your thing like a big thing. But he was like, yeah, what do I have to lose? I'm gonna supply them a few dials for prototypes, and they're gonna try. And then we went back with a big order. We were like, you know what? you need to train more people, you need to build more machines, let us help you, be in the media. We even brought him on TV.
Yeah, you did, yeah.
Yeah, so I think like all those people took a chance and we worked together to really like make something that benefit everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're seeing the product in front of us. It's absolutely terrific. It's um, it's what you would expect from an independent watchmaker. These are the standards of quality that speak out in favor of what you guys are doing, what you're trying to achieve here. I think now that we're here,
Yeah.
what would you think is going to be the next direction for Atelier Wen, and for example, for the Perception collection?
I mean, thanks a lot for asking, because that's really the big thing. I think really what we want to do is to keep going into that direction
Yeah.
of like more craftsmanship and sort of like more uncompromising, absolute products. So the next big thing for us is the chronograph. It's based on perception, so similar like case, similar bracelet. But what we want to do is this time also have a hand finished movement.
Sure.
You know, it's a very like incremental approach. There we have the handmade dials.
Right.
Next time we'll have handmade dials and hand finished movement. And this hand finished movement, it's something really, really big, because we're having basically the top people from Switzerland, like they are a subcontractor of AP for their very high-end pieces, unique pieces. We're sending them to China to train the teams there so that they can do similar finishing.
Sure.
So it's gonna be a movement with like handmade anglage,
That's amazing.
inner angles, you know, all the kind of like features that you find in those super, super high-end watches, they will be here, made by hands. It's maybe like 30 hours of work per like one movement. It's crazy just for the finishing.
Yeah.
And then an extraordinary dial that is blending different craft, really trying to elevate the hood.
Yeah.
But we're also working on other projects. We're working with some independent watchmakers from the AHCI in China. We're working on very exciting material, tantalum, which is quite hot these days.
Yeah.
And we're doing something that no one has done so far, so it's going to be quite cool. We're working on some other collabs, which, well, unfortunately, I cannot name just yet, but cool ones too.
Yeah.
That's about the project so far.
All right, superb. Let's circle back quickly to the Chinese movement inside this watch, for example. What has been? Do you think it's a limiting factor in terms of how the product on the whole is perceived in the community at large? People think of it as, oh, it's a Chinese movement. Is it even that good? But I see the finishing. I see the work that has been put into making the movement appear very nice. No question about that. But have you, as a watchmaker, found any concerns about timekeeping, about the quality of the movements as so far?
I think, yeah, that's a very right point, which is that when you say you have a Chinese movement, instead of starting from zero, you sort of start from -5 in people's perception. So you really need like to do a hard work to show them how your movement is actually a really qualitative movement. In our case, what we try to tell people is to really show them the extensive testing process that we have and QC process that we have. So the movements are like heavily tested at the suppliers, and the suppliers are already the highest quality movement they make. They are customized for us, only sold to us. Really, those movements cost the same price as some like mid-range Swiss movements, like a premium Soprod or premium ATA or Celita. So really expensive movements. And then we send them actually to like the premier like testing lab in China for precision instruments. This lab is the lab which is testing all the precision instruments in the Chinese space program.
Okay.
So like a very old established lab, very thorough with all the ISO norms. And then in-house, we adjust and regulate to 5 positions. So really, we try to do our best so that the movements really perform, and we want to show that to the people, tell them that, hey, that's not like a cheap Chinese movement, but for the chef, but really it's a caliber in which we invested a lot to make it like fit and more than proper.
But that's actually a lot of good information to be, that needs to be out there in the community at large, because not many people know these facts about what you're doing with these watches. But just to clarify, these are not Siegel movements, right? These are not. These are actually high-end grade high-grade movement,
Yeah.
Chinese movements, right?
So they are made by the best Chinese movement maker, which is called Peacock.
Yeah.
It's in Dandong, that's
Right.
in the northeast of China,
Right.
and they are the one with the highest quality. So Seagull is not that bad, but Seagull is how to say, it's an old-fashioned,
Correct.
previously state-owned enterprises. Things are slow.
Right.
They are big on volume, so if
Yeah.
you want like to order a lot of movements, I think that can be a good partner. But as to like making extensive customization, much higher quality grades, that's not really like their forte or their heritage. So we prefer to work with Peacock, and Peacock movements are crazily more expensive. They can't make the volumes that Seagull make, but anyway, we make like handcrafted watches, so that's not really our concern. We're not there to flood the market, but they are really willing to go into customization, better like testing, higher quality. So yeah, those are, I think, amongst the best movements you can find in China.
Superb. I think again, these nuggets of information are just simply reinstating our faith in the quality of Atelier Wen and their watches. Just to round off the Perception collection, you've done a couple of very nice collaborations with Revolution recently. Can you talk about them?
Yeah, of course. I mean, Revolution has really been a big support of ours, so I can't thank them enough. We've done 2 collabs, and actually, you know, to give you the story, I first met Waiko from Revolution in Geneva in April 2022.
Okay.
This was not even released yet. We had a chat, not released yet, and one day he just called me out of the blue and he was like, "Hey Robin, I want to do watches together, like 2 series." And so he really had faith in the thing because we had not resold. It was like, let's make 200 watches. So 2 series of 100. There's one which was called C, and it has like a very nice like a basket guilloche pattern.
Yeah.
But what is really, really cool about it is the red color. So people don't necessarily know about that, but to get the color on our dial, we do PVD plating. We don't do painting, because if you do spray painting, the thickness is too high and you lose the texture of the guilloche.
Exactly. Texture is lost. Unevenness comes onto the dial. Yeah.
But to do red PVD plating, that's actually very, very hard. There's very few companies that can do it. The proof is that you don't see a lot of like red plated watches. I mean, you don't see it at all. And we wanted like a very saturated, very bright, very like ruby red kind of color. And this took us months to find. We had like to experiment, to fine tune. That was a very long, thorough, expensive process to do. But the end result is that it's a watch that from 50 meters you see it and you're like, what's that? You know, I've not seen it. It really shines. It's really bright. I wish I had one for myself. I don't, not even the prototype. But that's a cool one. The second one was released is called San, and this one has a flanqué, which is kind of like sunray pattern. So it's this color, but it's not exactly this pattern. It's like 24 iterations. It's a bit more subtle. It's a bit more smooth. I think it's a good evening, kind of like cocktail watch, you know, like somewhere where you have to be like somewhat like classy, and this as well. But what's really special about the San is that we've actually improved the titanium grade 5 bracelet by polishing all the inner angles by hand.
Oh, that's amazing.
That's around like 280 angles per one bracelet, all done by hand, which is like really, really substantial. And actually here we have the only one prototype that we made. So you can see how the bracelet like shimmers when you articulate it. You can see how smooth the dial is.
And this is titanium as
this
compared
is
to
great
the
titanium. I mean, you can hold it, see how light it is.
Oh my God! Wow.
In comparison, like
to one of the steel 904L steel,
like you can see like the weight difference is really
the world
like,
of a difference.
Yeah.
Is it more difficult to achieve the same kind of brush and polish finishing on titanium as compared to
because
steel?
Titanium is really hard. So to polish it, it actually takes a lot more like hours. You use the machine like much quicker. So it's really a pain. Honestly, that's why the titanium is much more expensive to work with. And you can see doing this kind of like mirror polish finish on the concave bezel. That's actually very, very tricky on the grade 5 titanium.
Wow. Okay, so tell me, let's talk a little about the economies of scale, considering some of your watches in the same collection have chrome hands and some of them have steel blued hands. Does it kind of affect the timelines to manufacture these watches, the costing parameters of manufacturing these watches?
So usually we try to do like the 2 hands at the same time. It's a bit of an expensive activity to do this way because, you know, we never know the quantities that we make. Because the way we work is that, like, of course, we're very limited by the number of dials we can produce. You know, they are made one by hand. So yeah, the watches are basically out of stock. But then as we keep on making them, we enable people to take reservation. And after some time, we just look, okay, what dials do they want? And then we tell the suppliers, okay, it's going to be X blue dial, X salmon dial, and X gray dials. And only the gray dial has the heat blood hands. But because we don't know that in advance, we need to order more heat blood hands and also more like rhodium like plated hands. So yeah, it's quite an expensive activity, but because of course we don't want, to delay, to have like extra months of waiting time, we just like order the hands like upfront. And those are like hand bend hands, which is very expensive to do. If you look at the hands like under a microscope, you'll see they are like spotless. Those hands are like very, very, very premium hands, and it's a supplier which is known in China for being like like adamant about this. We tried many hand supplier. Hand is a tricky one, because you look at it, even from 1 meter, it looks fine, but then you look at the microscope and you'll see a lot of like tiny nits and like dust and scratches. But this one, it's actually a company called Pioneer. It's really like flawless under the microscope, and it's even harder to do on the heat blood hands, because those ones, you need to heat them. There's more like
and
handling.
Get the perfect color in a uniform basis, in fact.
Exactly, and it's a lot of like small batches of hands, because you can't do 500 hands at once. So there's a lot of rejects, of course, because you don't want it to be too dark or too clear.
What do you think is the future of Atelier Wen from here?
Yeah, I think really for us, the future is that we want to be like the #1 flagship, high quality Chinese watch brand. If I were to make like a very simple analogy, it would be in a way the kind of Grand Seiko or Rolex of China. Of course, I mean, we're not like fooling ourselves. We know it's going to take time. It's not going to happen next year or in the next 2 years. But we really want to try to build that positioning of making just the best watches in China. One of the big things we're working on is like developing fully our own in-house movement, because we see that, yes, we can customize, yes, we can improve, but there's a limit to that. You can't like 180-degree like transform a movement already existing. So we're working to make a very high-end base caliber, which has very high-end specifications, very long power reserve, very high accuracy, high beat, very good like winding structure. And that's, for us, I think it's going to be like a big, big step when we're able to showcase that new movement, which will be maybe on par with a Rolex movement or Grand Seiko movement. So that there's that. Really, that's our goal. And I hope we can gradually get there.
All these things that you're mentioning, these are like a collector's wet dream, right? You say high beat checkbox in my mind. You say long power reserve checkbox in my mind. So these are things that appeal to a collector at a primal level. Whatever you're saying, whatever we're looking at today is so meaningful. No discussion about an independent watchmaker is complete without talking about the state of independent watchmaking in the world right now. Would you care to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think we're seeing like a very, very interesting shift. I think before it used to be very like Swiss-centric. And then like Germany rose up, I think, in the like 80s and 90s, and now it's very well accepted fact that they make extremely good watches. But nowadays, I think we see like independents popping up everywhere in the world. And I think that the collectors, especially like collectors like in your community, they very much know that it doesn't matter where the talent is. What matters is that you have talent. So you can have great watchmakers like in Europe, in US, in Asia, well, everywhere. Like talent can be born everywhere, passion can be everywhere. So I find it really cool to see that you have all those names popping up in locations that were not maybe known for watchmaking, and today they are like accepted and celebrated, and I hope like it continues to be the case.
I think you're absolutely right on that, because the acceptance of independent watchmaking is shooting up rapidly especially in the past couple of years. But ever since, it was, from what I can tell you, for the Indian consumer, Indian market is very brand centric. It's very limited in its scope, in the way that it's not limited in scope. What I'm trying to tell you is that it's very brand conscious. The few mainstream brands that are popular have always been popular. They continue their trend of popularity even today, but it's the exceptions like us, the collecting community, which is in itself a niche category, within a niche community, within a niche hobby, right? And we are kind of the flag bearers for independent watchmaking. We are trying to get exposure to newer things, and our community members are the well-traveled, the well-read. They are the modern, outgoing, young, dynamic people who want to experience new things in life. And I think Atelier Wen ties up right nicely, very nicely into the ethos of our watch enthusiast community in India as well. The technical stuff is done. How about we do a quick fun thing
Yeah,
in this
definitely.
interview? First time in India, you said?
Yeah, very first time.
Have you tasted the spicy food yet?
A little bit yesterday at your gala, which was extraordinary. But honestly, that's one of my major, like, sort of like looking forward to, like, kind of stuff. So I really want to have a lot a lot of food to explore it.
Excellent. Excellent. So we'll suggest some nice places for you to experience good Indian food.
Thank you.
And you have a connection with India as well. Like you said, your girlfriend is from Bhutan, but studied in Delhi.
No, definitely she is. So she was very excited that I'm coming to Delhi because she lived in Delhi for a few years. She absolutely loves it. She loves the food. Actually, I have a list of items to bring back home.
Sure.
I need to bring back some Amul cheese, apparently, and some dried fish. So I don't know how I'm going to take that to France, but yeah, I need to figure out. Maybe we'll come back together, like, you know, like
we
in
look
a
forward
few months.
to that.
Like,
Absolutely. Absolutely. We look forward to that. And who knows, by then, we will have something in the works together. And we'll do something very unique very soon.
Yes.
So stay tuned for those details. And since this has already gone on a bit longer than we imagined, thank you, Robin, for coming to India. And thank you for having faith in us to do this.
Thanks a lot. I'm really happy, really glad. So thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. We'll see you very soon. And we have more content lined up for you. Don't go anywhere and keep watching the channel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone.